Hey, what's up? It's your boy BC Bader, and welcome back to the episode of the Bate Escape podcast, the podcast dedicated to all things masturbation, goon culture, solo sexuality. You are listening to the season finale of the Bate Escape podcast, season 4. Can't believe I've been doing this for 4 seasons. Wild to me. But yeah, I'm going to take a little break after this episode and come back at you with season 5 with really cool things. But I'm so happy to talk to my guest on this episode. His name is Jason Tantra. He is the owner and founder of Tantra for Gay Men. They're based in the USA, the UK, Europe, Australia, and South Africa. They are a Tantra school dedicated to the personal, sexual, and spiritual development of men who love men. Starting in 2008, they've been on a rapid path of growth. They offer courses and events across the UK, USA, Australia, and South Africa, and have a global team helping with their efforts. To date, 12,000 plus men have attended courses or events. And it's really fun stuff we talk about. We talk about his background, his upbringing, how his spiritual journey began at the age of 16. We talk about all the good work that he's doing with his courses. We talk about masculine, feminine, divine energies. We talk about healing your traumas through sex. We talk about a bunch of really cool stuff, really interesting things. So please enjoy this episode. I'm so glad that you have stuck with me through all this season. I feel like I've interviewed lots of really amazing guests, and I hope that you check out past episodes. And I hope that you really love this one. So thank you so much for listening and enjoy.
Hello there.
Hey, how's it going, Jason?
It's good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm actually
Oh,
really excited. I start my vacation today, which is so nice.
you start your what today?
My vacation.
Okay. I thought you were excited because it was me, not your vacation.
Well, I'm excited to be on vacation to be able to talk to you right now.
Okay, that's good.
Because you're
I'm
you
just
and
gonna
I
check.
are
You what?
you
Sorry,
know,
you and I are.
I was gonna say you and I are completely different time zones, so I needed a day off to like get you
Oh, really?
um
Oh, no.
yeah. Well, because like it's like what time is it in England right now? It's like 5
It's
p.m.
5 o'clock. I'm just finishing my working day, my working week actually.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like
so
9 o'clock in the
five,
morning for me.
9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know about you. I don't do anything before 11 a.m.
Well, I'm doing it for you.
Oh, bless you. I love you for doing that.
No,
I'm
that's
just gonna change
awesome.
my T-shirt a second. I'll be back in 1 second.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, 1 second.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a little bit better. I kinda match you a little bit more now.
Yeah, looking good. Get those guns out, bro.
I've got my little friend. Can you see him?
Yeah, it's adorable. Who is that?
This is Sunshine Blue.
That's a great name. What kind of dog is that?
He's a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and he's bored. It's like, "Daddy has been working, and it's raining, and I don't enjoy being out, and I hate my life right now."
Oh no. All right, well, he's gonna hang tight for another hour
He
and then he'll
is.
be good.
I've got my foot on his throat, so I will
Oh my
be
God.
keeping him restrained for that time.
Wow. The foot on his throat, keeping him restrained. That sounds inviting, actually.
Sounds kind of like BDA. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have
no,
that.
it's
I have
good. I
that
like it.
to my character. What do I call you? BB, Beastly Bader.
Yeah, that's me, Beastly Bader. That's what I go by in
Okay.
the Bader community. Are you familiar with the Bader community?
Not really, ish, but not really. I don't have.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I feel like okay, so for first and foremost, let me just welcome you. Thank you for taking the time
Hello.
out
That's okay.
to talk to me on my podcast. My podcast is really dedicated to like masturbation and a lot of the things that actually you practice in your own business, such as intimacy and vulnerability amongst men. And for those listening to the pod, I have on Jason Tantra, who is the owner and founder of Tantra for Gay Men, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes. Have
Yeah,
we
that's
started?
amazing.
Is that starting now?
Oh, I've been recording. That's just how I roll. And then on the back end, I just kind of like edit. I like it. People enjoy it because it's very like off the cuff and just like, yeah. So like, we're definitely in it. It's definitely recording
Okay,
for sure.
okay, okay, it's my best behavior now.
No, just be on all the behavior that you possibly can. That's
I'm
great.
pleased. I can't behave myself.
But that's what we like though. Like I feel like I would want to study a program that like is naughty at the same time as it is spiritual. And
Yes.
I think that's why I was so attracted to your work. And I had been following your work for a really long time.
Mhm.
And it started with a couple of years ago, I took like a sex sex coach training course.
Okay.
And I was telling people about that. And then I was talking to a lot of people in the Bader community, and they mentioned you. They were like,
Okay.
"Oh, do you follow Jason Tantra?" And I was like, "No, who is that?" And then they're like, "Oh, you should definitely like go check out his work." And then at one point, I believe I got on your app.
Oh, yes, yes, we have that. Our ashram, as we call that.
Yeah, and I got on there, and then I was just like, "Oh, this is definitely a space that I was definitely getting curious. I wanted to lean in, and then I got really busy with like this work thing, that I was like pursuing. Um, but then I recently got reintroduced to your work, and that's why I reached out, and I was like, "Oh my God, like I feel like this conversation could be really important in the Bader community specifically because I feel like we have a lot of things that
A lot of crossover, I think.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But I want to start with your information that you filled out on the form. And you started your spiritual journey at 16 years old.
Yes, yes.
That is wild to me.
Is it?
It's wild and it's impressively wild to me because the idea of having that much self-awareness at 16 years old is like completely beyond me. I was like thinking about climbing trees. I was not thinking about my
Oh.
spiritual journey. Talk to me about that. Like, how did you discover that at such a young age?
Well, at that age, at 16, I used to go we have this thing in England called the Spiritualist Church,
Mhm.
which isn't necessarily religious, but spiritual, and spiritual in terms of talking to dead people and channeling spirits and things from the other side. So I used to go with my mum and my sister. I think we were quite a formidable force. And I spent probably maybe at that age, maybe like a good 10 years training like psychic abilities. I trained as a spiritual healer before even Reiki was popular.
Yeah.
Um, and I was sat in a lot of closed groups. And I think part of how I work, if I'm teaching in a retreat or I'm working with somebody, I kind of use half psychotherapy and definitely half psychic ability blended in with my training as a psychotherapist. And these
Mhm.
two things together help me to be, of really deep service to people.
Yeah. How did you know that you had that ability? Like, is it like I just like that's where the impressiveness comes to me. Like, how are you so in tapped with yourself at that age? Like, aren't you like going through like this teenage like well, I guess it's different for everybody. You know, at that age, you kind of like are discovering different things about yourself and you're applying them in a way that's like beneficial to your life, right?
Yeah, I didn't have the greatest of childhoods. There was quite a lot
Mm.
of stuff going on that was pretty dark. Um, And I think that at the age of 16, I was just coming out of all of that and trying to figure out who I was and trying to make sense of the world. And
Mm.
also being gay in the southwest of England was not particularly, it still took another 1 or 2 years for gay to become mainstream. Do you remember the TV show Queer as Folk?
Yes.
So the US version, it was far sexier, the US version, but the
Yeah.
UK version was like a number of years before. And that for me is the moment I remember that all the shutters come off the gay bars. When I first went to a gay bar, they used to have a shutter and they used to open it and close it. And you were
No
like,
way.
yeah, it was really quite intimidating and quite undercover and quite secret. So I was trying to make
Wow.
sense of all of that world. And um, I think also I didn't really have the same journey of discovery that maybe teenagers have around that age. It was there was other stuff going on at that time.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible to think that like just like the evolution of LGBT queerness
Mm,
openness.
mm.
That's interesting to me. Like the fact that we had to like hide behind shadow, like you would knock on a
Yeah,
door and like someone would open it and be like, "Who are you?" Like just
yeah,
to make
yeah.
sure that you were like a legit gay man.
Well, it seems unthinkable
It
nowadays.
does. It really does. Like it's wild. Like I walk out the street and I'm a huge homo, but
What
like
also
back,
used to make me laugh when my porn used to arrive by VHS cassette,
I
and
remember
in
those. Yeah.
England, we don't have mailboxes like you guys have. We have letterboxes in our front door, and there's a sound that's made when a VHS cassette is posted through and it bangs on the floor, and you know in an instant it's arrived. And if you imagine that all of your sexual tension and frustration had built up to this one VHS, I think I was sore. I was sore. And then you get to the point where you've watched the same VHS cassette like 30, 40, and you're like, oh my God, I cannot watch this again. I can't even do it.
Yeah, you can.
But if you
I
think
s-
how like, accessible porn is now and how
oh,
varied it is, back in the day when I was 18, it arrived in a VHS cassette and
yeah.
plopped through my letterbox.
I no, I that's totally relatable. I feel like I came into the cusp of that, like
Yeah.
growing up as a teenager, like VHS were becoming obsolete, but I do remember watching porn on VHS tape, and then I lived in that transition where everything became onto digital DVDs and like, but I so like yeah, there's something really nostalgic about like a
Yeah,
VHS
yeah.
tape and like rewinding it, like hearing the and like trying to figure out like those parts where like really like got you off, like just memorizing. Anyway,
I hear you.
porn is awesome. But you've done so much in your life, like you volunteered on helpline for male survivors of abuse.
Yeah, so kind of I think early no, this is like so I think by about my mid-20s, I qualified as a spiritual healer. I used to go to
Mm,
psychic fairs and I'd be one of the psychic readers doing tarot reading, a little bit of mediumship.
mhm.
And at that age, I thought actually right now as I talk to you, I'm in Glastonbury, and that was where I used to come when I was 18 with my mum, and we'd go through the crystal shops. And that's what I thought spirituality was at that age. Um, yeah, I can't remember where I was going with that. Yes, and then in my mid-20s, the day I qualified as a spiritual healer, I never had one more client. And this has led me, I've had this feeling many times in my life. There feels like I'm not sure that we've got free choice or free will. There feels like a level of predeterminedness to my life that
Huh,
things and experiences and things that I've learned. I mean, I've got free choice. I could, go and stand in the road and be run over.
sure.
I could eat a bar of chocolate, but I think I was always destined to be a tantra teacher,
Mm,
and all of my experiences have given me all of the skills that lead up to this part.
yeah.
Um, and my job has been to be in service to men. I think 16,000 men have done my work over 19 years of teaching. And Ingo, my husband, and I, we co-teach, and our plan is to carry on for the medium term, maybe not at the same ferocity, but yeah,
Yeah.
certainly as we have done.
So I know you started off like as a spiritual healer. So I'm
Yeah.
curious to know like when did the intersectionality of sexuality and spirituality
Not
happen
till I
for you?
finished my psychotherapy training.
Okay.
So I started working on a helpline for male survivors of sexual abuse.
Uh-huh.
Uh, And then I started working in a prison,
Oh.
seeing inmates about the same topic. I did that for about 3 years. Um, and then I worked for a voluntary agency, again, working with sexual abuse. That was kind of my specialism through my psychotherapy training. Only towards the latter part of my qualification We call them counsellors in England. So as a counsellor,
Mm.
um, I then met Tantra, and that was the first time where my sexuality was then meeting my spiritual and my psychotherapeutic self. And it was like at that time, it was like I was going to say a hand on a glove. And it was like, oh my God. And then it became clear to me very, very quickly what my next path would be.
Yeah.
Um, which was then, I started 6 evenings in Bristol, introducing. Well, I then went away and trained for 2 years, but everything I'd done psychically, everything I'd done psychotherapeutic, everything I'd learned in Tantra, and all the other spiritual bits I'd done over the years kind of all came in. It was like, okay, I'm here to be a Tantra teacher. That's what I'm going to do.
That's really cool to have that enlightenment, right? To know
Okay.
that like I have all these things in my life. My life journey has led me to be of service to others,
Yes.
especially to men who really needed it.
Yes.
I mean, you're working
Yes.
with men that have a lot of trauma.
Yes.
And
Particularly in the USA.
yeah, oh, definitely in the USA. I feel like,
Significant. And my heart goes to them because there is a difference, I think, between, like, because I teach both in the UK, and I went through the process to enable me to teach legally in the USA. Imagine
yeah,
going to the embassy in London saying, please, can I have a visa for America to teach Tantra in your country, please, for gay men? And they said yes.
of
That has
course
been
they
one of
said
my
that.
biggest, oh my God. Have you ever, like, just like, what the fuck am I doing? Oh my God. And I did it. And I think my heart goes out because what I've really witnessed in America is how religion has been so fucking toxic for people. What
Oh
religion
man,
has, oh my God. And also, there seems to be more severity of issues that people
yeah,
have are
yes,
dealing with, and people are confused. And I also think because of the vastness of America,
yeah,
because it's so big, it's so easy to become anonymous and to be not known, and you carry around your own bag of shit and nobody knows anything about that. And also I think there's a lot of pressure to look the right way or be the right way, have the right friends, and then you've got this other stuff that's going on. And when you walk into Tantra, all of you walks into the room, not just all the lovely, sexy bits, but all of the
yeah,
other parts of you.
yeah.
And that feels like my vocation to be of service to that in people, because there's a lot of suffering.
I, uh, yes, like I feel like everything you just said is resonates for sure. And I can say that I'm part of that group
Mm,
of men. And I was
yeah.
just talking to this with another individual on my pod that I deal with a lot of like sex shame. As much
Yes.
as I'm an exhibitionist and as much as I flaunt my sex, and I feel like I'm a very sex positive person, and I love that about myself. Which is why I love being so like in this beta space, in my own journey, in my own path. I've become so comfortable in my own solo sexuality, and then having this platform and like just talking to people who are educated about sexuality and other topics, like now like I've become this like again like where you are of service for other men to just be like, hey, you could be, you potentially are solo sexual, and here, here's the signs, or like here can I help as much as I possibly can. um
Can
but
I
yeah,
just
you're
say also,
right.
well done to you for doing that.
Oh,
You,
thank you.
you're
Well,
using those
yeah,
experience and helping. And for me, I don't know about you, but it feels like everything I've done for me personally, I've turned into being using that of service to other people, and you sound like the same.
absolutely. And I think the reason why it started for me is I just felt so alone in it. Like I just was like, there's no one else like me in the vicinity that I was growing up, in my neighborhood or in my environment. I was just like, I'm so alone in this. Like it doesn't feel quote unquote normal. And so then that's became the catalyst of like, where can I reach out and like, being so sexual has been a lot of time alone. And so then I was able to like cultivate like who I really am and kind of solidify um first and foremost my own sexual identity, and then be able to express that. But again, going back to the whole trauma piece, there is a lot of religious trauma in my background, and I go so far as to say like indoctrination of these teachings that teach you that you are just bad fundamentally, right? So like I'm a person of color and I'm a gay man and I'm a masturbator. So there's a lot of it's like so nuanced and layered, and there's a lot of things that I had to like process. Which is why I was interested in Tantra, because I feel like that could be really helpful. So I Googled
Yes.
Tantra and
Yes.
I was like, what is Tantra? And I was like, oh, is Tantra just specific to sex? But it's not.
Mm-mm.
So can you
No.
tell me a little bit about
Uh,
what is Tantra, like the definition of Tantra, and like how different things can be in the Tantra space?
so what I also have to say is that Ingo and I, when we started teaching, or when I started teaching 19 years ago, there wasn't much definition of what tantra was for gay men at that point.
Mm.
And at that point, there was one person in UK and Europe that was teaching tantra. In the USA, you also had Body Electric, Joseph Kramer. We are not worthy. Thank you for your gift of everything you did with Body Electric. Amazing.
Okay.
Um, and so Ingo and I have kind of taken, or not taken, we've integrated what was a very heteronormative experience of Tantra, and maybe, and we've kind of queered it or gayed it. So what I mean by that is there's the original Tantra that happened X amount of years BC in India,
Mm.
um, and northern India. And that practice, the practices of Tantra, what was at the essence of Tantra was that one, there was no differentiation between you and God, so
Mm.
that everything is God. You are God. Every cell, every animal, every plant, everything is God. And that's what we call a non-dual approach. So at the moment, religion's done a very good job of telling us that God is separate to us and we need to be grateful and throw ourselves on
Yeah.
his mercy,
Yeah.
plead for forgiveness. Actually, the roots of Tantra is a Hindu Buddhist path. One of the cause was that actually you are God, everything is God.
Mm.
And the other part at that time in the society of India, it was only high people, people of high caste, were allowed to practice spirituality. And so everybody else just had to get on with what their roles were and do as they were told and just literally conform. And Tantra's idea was that, well, everybody deserves, or not deserves, everybody is invited to progress on the spiritual path. Everybody, enlightenment is for everybody, not just for the few. And so Tantra, along with Hinduism and Buddhism, did all of their thing in the 1970s. If you look then at that time, like pre this, like modern psychotherapy was born in the
Yeah.
50s and 60s.
Yeah.
There was the work that Kinsey did. There was
Yes.
also, the rise of the New Age and hippie movement, sort of
Mhm.
like in the 60s into the 70s. And at this time, Osho came forward, highly controversial figure. I always say to people, if you want to learn more about him, watch, is it Wild Wild Country on Netflix, about how he came to America, managed to offend a whole section of America, but he established what I would call as the roots of Tantra, both in America and Europe, and also had a huge Indian following too. And he was like a modern guru in that he was taking lots of different spiritual philosophies and kind of chewing them up to offer a perspective for Tantra.
Mm.
And at that time, in his ashram, so he had an ashram in India, then he moved to America, got kicked out of America, went back to India, and then later died. But and was also controversial. I think they had to send in the FBI to break it up in the end. But then that was
Yeah.
the time when you had cults in America.
Yeah.
But what he left us with, that was just like normal, like, wasn't it? It was like, oh, here's another cult. Oh, they,
America's crazy.
that aside, but what he left us with was an amazing foundation of philosophy, and he also left us with a foundation of practices and meditations, tantric meditations. And he was called the sex guru, and he was like advocating people to have sex. So new age, typically heterosexual, kind of, people looking for answers. This is at the same time as is it Woodstock Festival? It's kind of got those vibes to it, Glastonbury
Yeah.
Festival, kind of that kind of era. When that all then fell apart, what was then established were certain tantra schools, some of those using the name of Osho. Margot Anand, author of the book Art of Sexual Ecstasy, I think she was instrumental in documenting heterosexual practices of tantra. So when I came to tantra, and in my training, thankfully from a gay tantra teacher, I learned certain practices and techniques from a men's perspective. And I
Mm.
think what I've added to the practice of tantra as Ingo and I teach it is certainly the psychotherapy and the spiritual pathway. So when I learned tantra, it was like, here's a bunch of techniques and get on with that, and just have your experience, and that's it. I think a few things Ingo and I have done in our 19 years. One is to refine some of those practices, to make them more appealing to a gay queer audience. So, as an example, in the hetero tantra of the 70s, they would have like a king and servant game,
Oh,
which they would play, and they were doing that to kind of play very much with like power exchange.
sure, sure.
You take that idea of king and servant to the gay world, and you look at how we've made that, you look at BDSM, sub, power, dom, and those practices for me are hugely spiritual. They're fucking portals and gateways into spiritual cyberspace. I fucking love those. Tantra
Yeah.
also kind of integrates a lot of different practices. So I think one thing Ingo and I have done is certainly gayed and queered up Tantra to be relevant today, to really speak to people and test them and challenge them. It's like, if you ever heard of Tough Mudder, the like physical,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
so our diploma program is a bit like the Tough Mudder of Tantra, in that there's some really toe curling moments, but they have the potential to open you up in ways that you get at the peak of your orgasm and beyond that. And I
Yeah.
think the other thing that I've done is to bring in psychotherapy, and also I would say a spiritual direction. So it's a bit like what I call the so what test. So if we've wanked for an hour and we've had a great time, was it just that we wanked for an hour? Or was there something more? Was there some intention we could have used with that energy that we've created? Is there a
Mm.
way that we could use that masturbation as a way to open into a spiritual dimension or spiritual possibility?
Mhm.
And so I think a lot of what we've also done, I've done in Tantra, is to really bring the spiritual to the sexual and map a path, so that if you're practicing Tantra, for me, if you're getting fucked in a bathhouse, okay, I say to my students, if you want to remove any sexual shame, go to a bathhouse. Or there's two things I say in a bathhouse: go to a bathhouse and have sex right in the middle, in the video lounge, on all fours, so everybody can see you. And when you can do that, okay, without even a flinch, then you know you've got rid of shame. Until that point, keep practicing.
Oh my God.
And the second thing I give them as homework to do is to go to a bathhouse and have a interaction with every single person that is there, and learn
Whoa.
about how your ego defines preference. So what I mean by that is,
That's
I
interesting.
believe definitely that everybody has something to share with everybody. Might be a hug, it might be a fuck, it might be a kiss, it might be some but it's like we so blinker ourselves, like Grinder, love Grinder, great piece of technology. But what it does is it just gets us to be judgmental all the time about who we will and won't interact with based on how they looked. And I'm like, from a tantric perspective, go and interact with everybody and learn about yourself. Sorry, I get very passionate about what I
I
talk
I
about.
I love it, and I'm completely invested because I just feel like there's so many thoughts going in my mind as I hear you speak. Because I just feel like I think like tantra's for me. And I see it's very relevant in the baiter community. Um, there's a lot of men. I am one of them can reach a level of gooning. Are you
Yes.
familiar with gooning?
Is that
And
where you
so
kind of pull faces to use to
yeah,
change?
yeah. So
Right.
there's a lot. So it manifests itself into these silly faces,
Yeah.
cross-eyed, open mouth, and
Yeah.
drooling. And yeah, that's a beautiful display of soul sexuality and masturbation. But it to me, it's tantra. Like
Yes.
it starts at one point and then it just continues and it heightens and you're prolonging this pleasure and you've reached this a level
Yes.
of arousal that is completely gooning. And when you talk about, wanking for an hour with an individual. So for example, like last night, I had a friend come over. We were having a really great
Okay.
time. And
Nice.
I really do feel like I feel that I reach a level like I can do you okay, so then explain to me this. Do you reach tantra or you are tantra? Like how does that like how
Um,
do you inhabit tantra? Like how does that manifest? Are you just it or
well, I feel it as a presence
okay,
inside me all the time,
okay.
but I would say that if, for example, you're in the early years of a tantra journey,
Uh-huh.
because I think there's different stages that you go on through the decades. In the
Totally.
early part, when I was initially in my early years, I would have the most explosive orgasms without ejaculation, and also some of the most profound spiritual insights and glimpses in ways that I would be like, "Fuck," and I would literally come back from a week's retreat or 2-week retreat, and I'd look at my everyday world, and I'd be like, "What the very fuck?" It's like a drug trip. It's like the
It is.
biggest LSD trip ever, and you're like, "Fuck, I don't even fucking know how to go to the supermarket and operate as a normal person."
It
Great. Love
it's
it. Don't operate as a normal person ever again.
I don't, and that's true. And so that part of the sex coach training that I learned was like you are a sexual person everywhere you
Yes.
go, to the gym, to the grocery store, to work.
Yes.
Like you take your genitals with you. Like
Yes.
it's all encompassing. It's who you are. So yeah, so now in my spiritual journey with this gentleman last night, I've come to the realization like for me, baiting is an opportunity to mirror each other. And
Yes.
I think that's where I find most joy. Like it's a constant for me, it's just like constantly riding this high of arousal, like facing one
Yes.
another and like really engaging and seeing each other for who we are. Like our bodies, like our, what we the sexual energy that we provide to one another. And for me, it's like all sensory overload. Like I want to smell the sex, I want to see it, I want to smell it, I want to taste it. Like it's all just like, yeah, we can have porn going on, but like I'm present in that moment. And one
Can I
other
speak?
thing,
Okay,
yes,
I wanna speak to that bit, but you carry on
yeah,
first.
absolutely. No, I want to hear what you have to say because I have another piece that maybe you can
Because
help me with. But yeah,
I think that sounds amazing, and
yeah.
I love it, and I love that you're in it, and at some point, you're gonna hit a glass ceiling,
Mm.
and the glass ceiling will be, "Okay, this is getting boring now. I've done this, I've been there," um, and they'll get a point where you just are like, I've just hit a glass ceiling," and they'll be like, "Oh, is there something more?" For me, I'm talking to gay men, queer men, men who love men, whatever label, but in that community. For me, we are used to projecting outward all the things that we want and need. Like we take in visual stimulation, we want our cocks rubbed, so we want that external stimulation, and we want that arousal, and we want that to take us into ecstatic and orgasmic states, two different things. We want that. But at some point, that will the that will just hit a ceiling, and it then gets, like, boring. So it's then, well, what do you do? And I think this is where, like, for example, the arse is the home of the divine feminine. So if I'm talking in Tantra language, your cock is your masculine. Masculine and feminine, not to be confused with gender. They're just two very different polarities. Masculine's all about power, all about raw sex. It's about manifestation. It's about pushing. It's about consciousness. Whereas the divine feminine is all about nurturing, all about surrender, all about healing, all about love, devotion. And the softness of the divine feminine, one of the things to do in Tantra is quite literally, how do you expand that container? So some guys in a beta community, one thing they might get is, like, they feel like they're going to come, and it's like, well, how can I do more, activate more without losing my load and coming? How do I grow that container? And the answer is the divine feminine. So there's work to do in Tantra around building the container for the divine feminine. And also, for me, I've developed a silent meditation practice alongside my Tantra practice that enables the divine feminine container, because the divine feminine holds the masculine. Sorry, let me just say a little bit more because this might be helpful. So I've worked with clients. I used to do Tantra coaching a while ago. I used to work with men that had what they call rapid ejaculation, where they would feel like they came too quickly.
Mhm.
And one of the things I used to teach them was how to expand that sexual energy into their body so that they would, I had many, many times where I got them from like 10 seconds to 1 hour and not coming at all, and be like, oh my god, I feel amazing. So there's something
Yeah.
about the expansion, but it's not just in the body, it's beyond the body. And at
Mm.
some point, the energy or what you cultivate needs to turn inwards, so that actually you no longer need external stimulation. So, for example, I could be in my sexual energy. I don't need you to look a certain way. I don't need actually need anything from you for me to be in my own energy.
Mhm.
And then when you talk about with your partner what you were sharing, there's a time where there's both what you're sharing, but also what you're experiencing also turns inwards. And I can't describe this, but the inwards then meets each other, and it's then you open up. Lose words, but I use word language like cosmic portals, like infinite energy. It's like fucking somebody and having the whole universe in that penetration in the way that you're sharing. I start to run out of words.
I I don't share it much because I feel like people just won't believe me, or it's it can come from a place of like real trauma. However,
Yeah.
in my baiting practice,
Mm.
I have gone to a level of such pleasure, intimacy, vulnerability with myself that I
Mm.
have ejaculated and have seen God. Like I have witnessed a higher
Yes.
power.
Yes.
And in my most intense moments, I have released pain. Like I have cried. Like I have it's I can't describe it. It's
But I
like
get you. I hear it.
it's like this
Incredible.
explosion of just like years of trauma being released through my cock, of just like constantly being denied pleasure, constantly being turned away, neglected, and just finding myself in a moment of, I don't know. It's just I again I lose the words, so I don't share that with many people
That's beautiful.
because I
I
don't know
get it.
how.
I
Yeah,
hear
no,
you.
I thank you, and I feel like you would get it, which is why I'm inclined to share, because I feel safe enough to do so.
Thank you.
And it's like that. I feel like again, the work is like you can do it too. And I
Mm.
feel like that's what's so powerful about masturbation, as much as like, yes, I can goon and I can feel great, but to me, it's an opportunity to work on traumas through sex. And I feel like that's a real thing.
Completely, completely.
Yeah.
The other bits that you talk about, the bit that you shared,
Mhm.
again, I've developed and created new tantric practices, and there's one that I call Stargate.
Mm.
Do you ever remember the TV program Stargate?
It sounds familiar, but I don't feel
They
like
would
I've
make
watched
like
it.
a portal and it would take them into other universes.
Yeah, okay.
So if you imagine that experience that you share when you see God, imagine sharing that with another 20 men who are having equally the same experience. And there's something like a merging that happens where
Yeah.
it's no longer at an individual level anymore, but there's something in a collective. So somebody's having an orgasm over here and you're feeling it over there. There is much more to go at.
Absolutely. That's what I was like. So like that's where I'm at. Like that's where you talk about that glass ceiling. I've hit that. I know I've hit
Yes,
that. And so now, like with my partner last night, like I was masturbating and I could feel his pleasure. Like it wasn't even my cock. Like I was simply pleasuring him, but I knew it. I could feel it in my body. Like
in you. Yes.
yes, like it was transferring over to me. And then those are the parts where I'm just like, no one's gonna believe this shit, bro. Like no
No,
one's gonna think it.
completely.
I mean, you
Well,
get it,
no,
obviously, you get it, but like,
when,
like newbies, like newbie baiters or newbie men that are like curious about this and like, it doesn't happen overnight. It's been years in the making. Like at least it's been like 8+ years where I've been on this journey with myself. And you're right, it does feel that way. It feels like a portal into like another side of me. And I feel like my solo sexuality has really saved me in my life.
Mm,
Um, And so, like, I always try to remind myself, like, those energies, I take them everywhere I go. Um, and it just allows me to be like a better person to like everyone, first and foremost to myself, and then others around me, like at work, my friends, my really, my lovers. So yeah, so I feel like, am I Tantra?
yeah, I love it. I love what you're saying. For me, open up your ass. Do the same amount of work
So,
on your ass.
so that's the thing. Actually, you know what? I could actually benefit from like I'll work on my ass. So I'm a total top.
Okay.
I've always been that energy. I've always presented that energy. Even when I was like another thing on my journey to that I've been discovering is like I've just fully come out as bisexual, and it feels really good to me. Like inhabiting that space it feels natural. Like my journey, like my
Yeah.
evolution, like it feels good. Um, but that's always been like a place of not shame, but like very vulnerable.
Around being
Bottom.
bisexual. Oh,
No,
about
the
being a
bottom, but the bottom space. Like I don't really play with my butt. Others really don't play with my butt. And I don't know. Maybe I haven't done a lot of work about it. Maybe I do have some sexual trauma around my butt. I don't know. It's a whole different thing that I have to work on. But yeah, like
how are you with surrender?
um I'm pretty good. Like I can inhabit both sub and dom qualities, but they're different, very sexual acts.
They are. Yes.
And it also too depends on the person's energy, not
Yes.
necessarily
There,
age. That's another thing that I'm like working on. Like when you say like you were speaking about you get to the point where it's just like I don't even need you to give me anything for me to be within my own sexual space. That's where I'm at. So like I accept everybody for who they are, regardless of age, gender, race, religion, blah blah blah, blah. Like those things don't matter to me because I know that I can tap into my sexuality anytime in any moment and provide that to others. So like you're not turning your on, I'm turning myself on and I'm sharing this space with you. That's where I'm
yes.
at right now. So that's a really great place to be.
Yeah.
However, I still get caught up in those moments where I'm just like, oh, I'm not attracted to this person. And those are the moments where I really look inward and reflect and be like, why? What is it about this person that's triggering me? And what is the work that I need to do in order for myself to like unmask like there's nothing wrong with this person. There's nothing wrong.
No.
There's an issue with me that I'm not allowing them to like cross that sexual boundary with me. Why? Why are they putting a stop to it?
Yeah. Completely. All of that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I
I don't
and I
even know
also
what I was I don't even know what I was supposed to say, but yeah, I was on a tangent.
when I then start to talk about tantric sex, like, I've often thought about how would it be to produce some amazing tantric sex videos.
Yeah.
Tantric sex, it's so inward. On the outward, it just looks utterly boring and like nothing's
Oh,
happening.
yeah, no,
Like
definitely.
it's just two people there and for like 6 hours, and yet their internal experience is interdimensional. Yeah, and just
Yeah.
hilarious for me that I try because if you're trying to I market courses because I want people to come because I know it can be helpful and everything, is really, it's a good thing to do tantra. But
Yeah.
if you try and sell tantric sex, like, yeah, it's going to be really boring. You're just going to be there looking at somebody for like 8 hours. Nobody's going to want to go to
No, but
that.
I think the people that you get, the people that are interested in it, those are the people that are ready for it.
Yes,
Oh, I just
yes,
dropped my iPad. So I think like someone that's gonna find it boring or just like not, they're just not in a space to just
I
they're
hear
not
you.
ready for it. So I think I think the people that are taking your courses and are looking for information from you, those are the people that you need. Those are the people that you want
We've got them. I've
anyway.
got them.
Yeah, no, definitely. The other piece that I was curious or to get like some um your feedback on was like I have a tendency to disassociate,
Uh-huh.
especially in sex. So like oftentimes while I'm, with myself or with someone else, um, and I don't know, is it because I'm so heightened that I'm just so focused on my own sexual gratification? I don't think that's it because I tend to think about other things as I'm masturbating rather than just keeping focus on the body.
Can I ask a personal question and it's okay to not answer?
Sure, no, this go for it.
Do you have any sexual trauma in your life that you've experienced, maybe in childhood or teens?
Um, it's funny. I've gone through therapy and I've had these conversations before, and I'm inclined to say yes. I just
Okay,
don't know what it is, and I feel like the work is unmasking that, uncovering that. Like, because it does feel very real to me that I have had some sexual trauma. I
yeah.
just can't pull it. I don't remember it. I've
So
disassociated from it so much. Yeah.
I would say it's connected with that because what
Yeah.
you're just describing, that disassociation, is what you said a couple of sentences ago about disassociating in sex. I always say that if it's happening in your sex, it's happening in your life and vice versa. And your
Oh,
sex can be a really good, like if you want to work out how are you doing, have a look at the sex you're having. So whenever I meet people, I don't ask how are you. I'm like, how's your sex? And if they're like, "Yeah, it's amazing," or it's rubbish, or I'm not enjoying it, or I'm stuck, or I'm lost, it's a really good way
yeah.
of finding out where people are at with it.
You know what? I'm actually gonna solidify that. I'm gonna say yes. There is sexual trauma. When I think about it now, I want to say yes. The severity of it, I don't know. That's where the work is. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
But you're
so you're
right.
finding it in 2 places. You're finding it's coming up in your sex when you disassociate, so
Yeah.
there's some clues there, and as you said, you're also finding it in other times, the memories on it. The other thing to say is that, if that happened, like, in very early childhood years, it's very common to not have a remembrance. So often people can feel like they know that something happened, but they don't know
Hmm.
what happened, and
Yes.
normally that's in sort of like early childhood years.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know if that's
Th-
helpful.
Yeah, it is. No, it is. And it totally is. And I feel like that's what I find so fascinating about like the human mind.
Yeah.
And during the sex coach class, we were required to read. I'm sure you've read it. The Body Keeps the Score. Or
I'm
have you heard of it?
sure I'm not sure if I have.
That's all right. It's basically just a book on
I
trauma and how the body remembers the
Yeah.
trauma even though you've checked out.
Yes.
Like it's
Yes.
essentially your mind just keeping you safe from like
Yes.
such a
Yes.
horribleness that you're just like
Yes.
that, and that's why I disassociate. And like you, when you shared about your past experience, like I had a very traumatic upbringing, childhood, not necessarily sexual, like in other capacities, and so I feel like that does trickle in at some point.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and I've been called on it many times. People will just be like, "Yo, like, where are you?"
Where are you?
Yeah, and I'm just like, "What do you mean?" And I've just like I've learned now. I've gotten better at checking on it.
Yeah.
But
Well
masturbating
done
has
you for
def.
even being aware of it.
Oh, it's taken a while. I'm proud of
And
it
even
though.
that there's something there.
Oh, totally, 100%. And I've known that for a very long time, and you know, it's fear, man. Like it's heavy shit. And like you're an adult, you got shit to do. You know, you got people to show up for. You know, and you know, where's the time?
This is what I was saying yesterday. I recorded my podcast yesterday. Or actually, I was saying about why go on Tantra retreats.
Hmm.
And one of my arguments for going on a Tantra retreat is I don't think you can deal with this stuff in the day-to-day life. You need to remove yourself from your day-to-day life so that you can fully immerse yourself. And for me, like a Tantra retreat, you're doing practices and exercises that are amazingly blissful, amazingly, and the psychotherapeutic aspect helps you integrate that, make sense of it. If stuff pops up in a retreat, you've got time to look at that. I don't know any other times that people are able to fully reflect and give themselves the space in a normal day-to-day life. I don't know about you, I'm like running around doing lots of head activity, and I
Yeah,
don't always have
absolutely.
chance in my life to be with me, if you know what I mean.
Not at all. You know, you work all day, you have a
Yep.
dog, you have your lover, you have whomever, family, like you're constantly giving yourself away to so many
Yep.
different people and you forget
Yep.
to give some to yourself. But I'm curious to know, like in these retreats, you know, I'm sure it's bound to hit a nerve, right? You're
Yes.
you're 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 working with men who may have never tapped into their emotional side of their lives and they're
Yep.
processing a lot of shit. How do you hold space for that? Like what is the yes, it's a place to be sexual and feel pleasure, but ultimately, you know, people are
Yes.
being triggered. Like how do you just keep people safe while they're experiencing those different emotions?
So I've been working with people for God, 30 years spiritually, probably about 20 years psychotherapeutically. I trained as a psychotherapist. I also worked in an alcohol rehab
Mm,
um, for a few years as a family therapist, working with families. And also, I would hold the group. That was the best place I ever learned how to hold groups in psychotherapeutic holding was in an alcohol rehab. Jason, will you look after the residents this afternoon at 6? And I'd be like, oh my God, there's me and 16, 18 residents and 2 hours worth of work to do. That taught me very, very quickly how to hold people. But
yeah.
what I've developed in my Tantra retreats is a method called spiritual inquiry. And as I said, half of that is psychotherapeutic, and half of that is the more psychic, mystical. So people kind of get to work with me and Ingo. And when I work with somebody, it's like I get a DNA strand of them. So some of the things I've named today, they've not been by chance that I've named them. They've been specific for you. I just don't tell people that.
Hmm.
Um, so and so when you start to feel somebody, if someone's been through some very extreme processes, both amazingly good and maybe a shit ton of stuff's come up because this is the place for it to come up,
Yeah.
you know, I just have an immense love for people, and I get how difficult life is, and I get how difficult it is to deal with stuff. And with that care, that love and compassion, you know, I hold people. You know, we have a code of ethics. And one of my golden rules is don't shag your students. Beastly Bader. I never, ever, ever have heard don't shag your students. And the reason being is
Okay.
because I'm working with really, you know, in-depth trauma. If I've got my hand in the cookie jar, I'm not in service to other people. I look after my needs outside of there, away from there. In a retreat, I'm totally in service to what people are bringing and, you know, and what their process is. And we also
Mm,
have what I call like a forensic approach. So say like you came on a retreat, um, you know, we're watching you all the way through. We're watching what's going on. We're getting a sense of where you're at. So we're kind of tracking and following what's happening for each individual. and that improves the quality of holding.
Yeah.
Um, so like for me, we just had 2 sold out week retreats, one in upstate New York and one in Glastonbury the same week. Fucking people are still, where are we now? August, reeling from that week about what their experiences were, both in the magical and mystical, and also processing everything that came up. So in the
Yeah.
retreat, we spend 2.5 hours every morning doing group work, processing what's been happening. Maybe 3 or 4 people will come up and we work at depth with that person. And then, you can then integrate that and go on to the next bit of the retreat.
Mm.
Like in the afternoon and evening, we do practices, which is typically close off sexual practices. But actually, the sex is just like a transformer. We could use LSD, we could use plant medicine, we could use yoga. At some point, it's not just about sex. Sex is the vehicle. It's quite a nice vehicle and it feels really good, but it isn't the destination.
Got it. Yeah, and I feel and I feel like that's such beta talk because with masturbation, it's not for me, at least for me, I speak for myself. We're not monolith. Um, that that it's not about the destination. It really is about the journey. It's about
Yes.
experiencing the pleasure and being able to, you know, kind of follow where that leads you in that,
Yeah. Yeah.
in every single session, just kind of like, whatever turns you on at one point, like you could deviate and that can be sexy and this can be sexy and all the different things.
You
Um,
love it.
what are kind of some of the things that you offer? Like what can you accomplish um by looking into your work? Like, are you able to become a tantra teacher? Like, is it just for your own
Yeah. So
benefit?
for me, there's various things because there's also a big community that sit behind me in Ingo. So we have different facilitators,
Mhm,
um, and we've just changed. I had an ankle break 2 years ago, and that kind of changed our work a little bit.
mhm.
And as I said, we work is it stateside and in the UK. Um, we want people are attracted to us. We want people to come that are wanting a spiritual journey, that are looking for a spiritual journey and would like their sexuality, their sex, their sexual energy to be the vehicle, the centerfold for that. So if
Yeah.
people are stepping forward with that, typically people will come for a weekend. So in the USA next year, I'm going to be coming and doing a little tour, New York, Boston, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Springs, San Francisco, to do like 2
Nice.
papers. And then in June, in the summer of next year, we're going to be doing our next diploma. These are deep weeks, and I only recommend them if somebody's also like they've done like a level of therapy or they've done a little bit of like personal reflection work. And the title for that is going to be Birth, Sex, and Death. And we're going to be doing this one
Whoa.
week both in the upstate New York and also in Glastonbury in July. And this is like, from a tantric perspective, looking at the idea of death
Mm.
and all of our, like, nobody ever looks at that. And also looking through different life stages. So, like, for me, my teenage years as a gay man was not great. And I feel like bits of that were stolen from me. And it's like, well,
Mm.
how would it be to rediscover myself as a sexual being in a way that that enabled curiosity, that enabled growth? So this is going to be a hugely spiritually moving week, and lots of content, lots of stuff. And then
Yeah.
we also have our Tantra Love Festival in Glastonbury in August. And then we have our online ashram, community.tantra4gaymen.com. And our ashram, we have a rolling online program. So every week there's live classes and then there's
Oh,
video
cool.
lectures and practices. So at the moment, since the 29th of June, we've been learning how to become multi-orgasmic, and that will go all the way through to mid-October. And we've really broken it down in little chunks, little practices to do, live classes, almost like baiting classes, that kind
Yeah.
of energy. And then from mid-October, we're going to be looking at chakras and sex, and chakras and spirit, and chakras and love, and kind of going on a chakra journey. So the ashram is like a rolling program of tantra that we teach, which is great for people in different locations. And we also did offer a teacher and coach training.
Mhm.
Um, we did this in the last 3 years, and we're just like reworking. Like next year, we'll have news on what our new teacher and coach training. So, for example, what I love is most people offering tantra in UK and Europe have been students of mine and Ingo, and that really warms our heart, because I feel like I'm in the late fall of my tantra career. You know, I've done this for 19 years. I think I'll be doing it for another 5, 6 years maybe. Um, and I love that we're kind of helping empower the next generation to kind of, take what we've done, and move it forward in different ways. So there's lots of these different ways to come and experience us.
You think I would be a good tantra like coach?
Oh, I think you, but whereabouts in the world do you live? Are you in California?
I'm in Los Angeles, California.
Oh my God, I mean, you're in the epicenter of, but also if I was talking to you personally, I would say make it personal to you. Maybe go and do a teacher training or a coach training, really learn Tantra for
Yeah,
you, and
yeah.
then come away and make it, and develop your own presentation of that, because you've already, what you've done is quite unique, and the way that you present what you're doing, and I would say to build on that.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate
Oh
that.
yeah, I think you'd be amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I feel that way.
Yeah.
I do think like maybe that could be a part of like my journey and my evolution. I get the messages. I people seek advice, and
Yes.
it all comes from a lived experience of what I'm able to just be like, hey, this is what I did. This is where I can point you or guide you and inform you. But I think I definitely would want to have more of like the skill, the
Mm.
teachings, the learning, the experience to be
Foundation.
able to facilitate those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, hey, thanks so much for coming on my podcast and talking to
That's
me
okay.
about all the cool work that you do. So I know people can find you on your website,
Yep.
which
Tantra
is
for gaymen.com.
the number four.
Yeah, tantra for gaymen.com.
Are you on any social? Are you on Instagram, TikTok, X?
Yeah, Instagram is Jason and Ingo Tantra with an underscore between each word.
Okay.
So Jason and Ingo Tantra.
Are you on
And
X at all?
yes, as Jason Tantra. I've got a whole list of yeah, just Google Jason Tantra actually, and that will open
Okay.
up lots of different places to
I'll definitely have like all your links in this bio so people
thank
could
you.
just start clicking things and putting those things. But I my suggestion to you, if you do want to get more eyes on it from the Bader community, definitely social media. Like definitely do the whole like X, Twitter, all the Baders are in that space. I feel like that would be a really great place to get more eyes on the great work that you do. And
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're so welcome. Um, thanks again for being on my podcast. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I'm definitely gonna keep a lookout for some of those trainings. You said Palm Springs next year, yeah?
Yes, I'm gonna do a weekend there in October, November, probably more
Weekend.
October.
I'm going to Palm Springs
Are
this
you?
weekend for
It's
my
a great, I
birthday.
love Palm
I'm like taking
Springs.
off and
It's
yeah, I love Palm
it's
Springs. It's
amazing. I
great.
love
It's
it.
gonna be so much fun.
If actually, if I
Um,
had to live in one place in America, it would be Palm Springs, I think.
oh yeah, I definitely see that for you for sure. Definitely Palm Springs. Cool. Thank you so much for talking to me. I really
All
enjoyed the
right, lovely to
conversation. Super
thank you for hosting
fascinating.
me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm your host, Beasley Bader. You can find me on all socials under that name. And I will see you on the next episode of the Bate Escape podcast. Thank you so much.
Lots of love to you. Take care.
Hey, what's up? It's your boy Beasley. I hope that you love listening to this episode, Jason. We talk about a lot of really cool things. If you are interested in taking any of his courses, or if this resonated with you and you want more information, go check them out over on Tantra for Gay Men. Check out their socials. He's a really great guy, super informative and educated on the topic of Tantra and sexuality. And I'm sure you'll find lots of other interesting things as well. Like I said, this is the season finale, season 4 of the Bate Escape. I will be taking a break just for a couple of weeks, working on how to launch season 5 of the Beta Escape, because I will be back with more guests and more goony chat about masturbation. So thank you so much for listening to this season. I hope you check out past episodes with all my interesting guests. And as always, I hope that you like, subscribe, share, comment on this podcast. Go to your favorite platform, give it a high rating, leave me a comment, chat with me. I love hearing all about who you are and why you love this podcast. Thanks again for listening. I always enjoy making this podcast, and I will see you in season 5. Thanks.